Good morning. We're going to give everyone just a moment to get into the session. All right. We will begin in just a few minutes. We'll give everyone a moment to make sure they're joined into the session. All right. Nick, I'm showing 10:32. Are we ready to go on your end?
Yep, I'm ready to go.
All right. Wonderful. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Denise Mayatico, Vice President of Public Policy and External Affairs for the Greater Lehigh Valley Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to today's healthcare webinar entitled What's in My Food? This webinar series is sponsored by St. Luke's University Health Network and presented by the Chamber of Commerce Healthcare Committee. A few housekeeping items before we get started. First, this meeting is being recorded and will be available on the Chamber's website. We ask that you please hold any questions till the end of the presentation. Feel free to enter them in the chat during the presentation and we'll facilitate a Q&A at the end of the call. Today's discussion is sponsored by St. Luke's University Health Network and hosted by Nick Maxell, Chair of our Healthcare Committee and Vice President for Gallagher. I'll turn it over to Nick to begin our conversation exploring the impact of what's in my food.
Thank you very much, Denise. Welcome to today's session for our healthcare webinar series. There is so much information out there that makes us question what we're putting in our bodies and if the food we eat is actually healthy. I don't know about you, but I have a lot of questions about the food that's available. Where's it from and what's in it? And what does it mean for my health and my family? Gallup's 2025 poll found that 73% of US adults read nutrition labels. The challenge is understanding the labels. What exactly is propylene glycol anyway? Today, we are looking forward to hearing from our experts and better understand nutrition, healthy choices, culinary medicine, and the trends doctors are seeing that reveal how poor nutrition is impacting our health. Our first presenter this morning is Chloe Pickell. Chloe serves as Director of Operations and Certified Senior Advisor for Care Patrol of the Lehigh Valley and Upper Bucks. There, she helps older adults and their families navigate senior living options, care resources, and the aging journey with confidence. Chloe earned her degrees in nutrition and psychological sciences from Pennsylvania State University and has dedicated her career to supporting health, wellness, and quality for all stages of life. As a representative of Care Patrol of the Lehigh Valley and Upper Bucks, Chloe works closely with healthcare professionals, senior living communities, and families to connect older adults with the resources they need to thrive. Combining her educational background with her experience serving seniors and their loved ones, she is passionate about helping individuals understand the connection between nutrition and healthy aging. We're excited to have Chloe join us today.
Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I thought we would start off with just going over some basics on nutrition, getting a little idea of what is out there and try to debunk some of the myths that are plaguing our news feeds today, our phones, and everything in between. So I thought we'd go back to the basics and go from there. So as Nick mentioned, I just wanted to reiterate a little bit about myself. I am our Director of Operations and a Certified Senior Advisor here at the Care Patrol in Lehigh Valley and Upper Bucks. And I currently assist with consulting families and providing some additional resources when it comes to looking for appropriate senior care solutions. And I'm also had the opportunity to go into some of these communities and speak on some of these nutrition topics. And prior to that, I just wanted to delve into a little bit more of my experience where I've worked in home health care, and as well as a dietary manager in one of the continuing care retirement communities. So I've been able to kind of see some of these different angles in which nutrition can be beneficial to all different ages and just different discussions. So just to touch upon my education a little bit, I am from Penn State University and studied nutritional sciences with the dietetics option. So that'll come into play a little bit as I discuss what are some of the credentials as well as to finding that right person to discuss those nutritional needs with. And then on top of that, I am also a dementia friend and champion and a mental first aid certified assistant. So I assist those anytime that we are looking for some community advocacy in hand with a lot of our nutrition and mental health needs. So I thought we'd start with a little bit of our nutrition landscape today. So discussing some of our overall requirements, so our baseline needs, our macronutrients, our micronutrients, and maintaining that hydration we all need to stay healthy. Discuss some of those modern trends that we're starting to see pop up on social media. Everyone's talking about these new diets and discussing some of the different foods that are now coming out today, the GMOs, the hyper processed, and how that can affect our lifestyles. And again, some of that misinformation that we're starting to see come out, whether it be on the different social media aspects that we see, different news, and just to touch upon how you can discern from what is real and what's not. So, to start off, the main thing that we are seeing today in our misinformation crisis is how we are seeing all these social media trends and fads. A lot of what we're seeing today is what is engaging. So people are taking anything to an extreme to get that engagement, and that's really where all of that information stems. So, as I put here, 90% of the information that is now going across all different forms of social media platforms is truly and fully unsubstantiated. And that can lead to some dangerous diet practices and fads that we now need to make sure that we're reiterating and defining what is the healthy alternative. Those different types of fads and misinformation can lead to a lot of consumer misconception, micro and macronutrient deficiencies, and just an overall distrust in the dietetic and nutrition community that is aware and involved in providing some medical nutrition therapy. So again, to touch upon some of those different statistics, on top of the 90% of misinformation that's kind of coming out nowadays, 80% of people are finding it difficult to distinguish between fact and fiction, which can really cause a stark differentiation on how we're getting our information and what is that correct information. And 50% of those people are relying only on information online to get their research nowadays, which can once again kind of perpetuate that model of which is true, which is accurate, who do I go to, who do I see for all of this information, and where should I really go? And a little interesting I found, while looking into all this kind of information is a lot of people are using AI tools like ChatGPT to kind of go on and create those formats. A wonderful thing to be used, and I'd like to kind of touch upon how that is can be beneficial, but I do want to touch on the misinformation and dangers of it as well. So, two main trends that we are seeing a lot nowadays is the aggressive elimination and the commercial detox plan. So, when we're thinking of aggressive elimination, we hear a lot of people discussing carnivore diets, raw food diets, no carb diets, keto diets, and a lot of those things can really strip our body of our necessary nutrients and the macro and microbiome that our bodies need to kind of function as a whole system. So when we're taking a full whole food system out of our diet, we are quintessentially obstructing just everything in our own little microbiome, our homeostasis of our body. So if we are not having our meat, our proteins are now deconditioning. So that is something that if it's necessary, medically necessary, we completely understand, and that's something that can be combated with different alternative needs. But that's then where a professional would come in and kind of discuss where those needs are missing, and how to construct alternative plans to ensure that those still needs are met while maintaining those diets. Now, with those aggressive elimination diets, I generally do not recommend that anyone start that for just any reason, any just different fun, we saw it online, I wanted to try this challenge. It's fine if it's, a couple days just to see how it's going, but if you do feel as if it is a beneficiary thing to you, you are going to want to discuss that with your medical professional and a licensed nutritionist, dietitian to discuss what those needs need to be then to be counteracting what you might be missing. Similar as that with the detox plans, when you are looking at something to remove from your body, you are automatically removing the beneficial things as well. There's no miracle pill, tea, food, gummy, anything like that that will give you those immediate results. And that's one of those big red flags that you're going to see. If it's kind of promising you those guaranteed results, quick, easy fix, most likely it's taking everything, the good and the bad out with it. And the biggest thing I can state is that our body in itself has its own natural detox. So when you're seeing those detox promotions and everything like that, you really just have to recenter your mind to remember that both our kidneys and our liver are our internal detox system. So a lot of that is just purely marketing from marketing standpoint. So, to kind of touch on some of those different claims that we're seeing out there, really to get engagement, I wanted to kind of clarify what some of those red flags we might be seeing and how you can kind of hold on, stop a minute, think it through before you move forward with any of those different changes. So, again, one of the main three flags that we usually see is absolute restrictions. So, any diet that is recommending that you remove full things from your diet, whole foods, carbohydrates, anything along those lines, you want to stop and think about what is actually necessary for your system before you move forward with a choice on that matter. And again, same thing along with the other red flags is quick fix promises. So anything that you see that is promising you quick, immediate results is most likely a fad and might provide minimal results due to water retention or water loss, but nothing is going to be a short-term easy fix. If we had that, I promise you, a lot more people would be using it today. So I always just say, please stop, hold off, think it through before you really decide to make one of those, quick decisions on purchases such as that. And then finally, finding claims that are non-certified. So to go kind of hand in hand with a lot of the social media that we're seeing today, a good chunk of those people, unfortunately, are not certified or licensed and have not had that background nutrition that is necessary to provide those resources and to be able to substantiate their claims. So, to really make sure that you're verifying who you're speaking with and the information that you are obtaining is accurate, you can always reference the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics at eatright.org. They keep that up to date. There is usually an annual review of any nutrition updates, anything along the federal guidelines to kind of give you that basis of information so you can refer to if you find something and you're interested on a topic. And again, the most important and highly accurate people that you're going to find to discuss any of those needs with are going to be registered dietitians, board certified clinicians, physicians. For them, they did a lot of schooling. So to just give you a bit of idea, a lot of the people that are talking on nutrition today on social media have kind of just got it because, we know all of our basic information, and it's easy to talk on things. You might get a certificate here and there that might be a one-day training. But when you are a registered dietitian, you need to go through undergraduate school. You need to complete an Ascend DPD program where you then complete your 500 hours of information on different aspects of nutrition as well. So the whole lifestyle of community, clinical, and educational. So you get a full range of that information, and then you need to complete your board certified application and certifications to complete any additional um, education on the system. So to become a registered dietitian takes a little bit more time, but it provides a lot more of a genuine resource. So I thought we'd go into a little bit more of decoding the different food ingredients that you might see when we're walking through a grocery store. Because I know for me that is the most overwhelming part and still is to this day because there are words on these food labels that we have that are new. We are constantly having new GMO foods, new bioengineered, and a lot of it can seem very overwhelming. And I wanted to just kind of give you some tools to use when you're going through the grocery store to kind of review and look to see if they have any of those major signs. So just to give you a basic, when you're looking at the back of any food, any label that you're reading, the main ingredients are weighted by their increased or the amount in the actual food. So anything that's in the first three is going to be the primary components of whatever that meal is. So you're going to want to see and hope to see that those are, the whole foods or the main ingredients in a staple that you're expecting to be there, and look to minimalize the fillers that might be in the food near closer the end of those food ingredient lists just to make sure that what you're mainly getting is that whole food. And then again, sugar lyses, we're seeing a lot more different chemical compounds of different types of sugars or sugar-free sugars that are still actually sugars. A lot of it is still broken down to the same chemical compound. So when you're seeing all these different names or lists for different non-sugar alternatives or sugars, for it to be a sugar itself, there is always going to be the ending surname of an ose, an OSE. So you're going to think sucrose, fructose, dextrose, sucralose. All of those are different combinations and chemical compounds, but they are all still a source of sugar. Broken down differently, but certainly still a sugar within your food label. Now, a little bit more of those natural sugars that you might see in your labels are agave, brown rice syrup, and maltodextrin. So they're found from a little bit more of a natural source, rather a chemical compound. And then some of the different additives that I kind of mentioned that you want to see rather on the latter end of any of those food labels are going to be your artificial colors. So think your red dye 40s, your yellow 5s. A thing to note on that is that a lot of communities now are removing a lot of those food dyes. You are going to see a lot more of voluntary recall from different foods. I know the Cheetos and Frito-Lay company have just done a lot of different reductions in food dyes as we see a lot of associations with that and different behavioral and mental health issues and long-term health concerns. A lot of Europe has already kind of removed some of those food dyes from their foods, and you can tell that it has made a positive impact. So a lot of different communities and different foods are now starting to reduce that and introduce more natural food colors. So think a red beet color or any other different types of more natural based but pigmented colors to kind of benefit those different foods that we enjoy. Another thing is those preservatives. So sodium nitrates, BHAs, BHTs, those are all different food additives that are in our foods to stabilize them, to kind of increase that shelf life, which is beneficial, but it can also kind of detract from the quality and the fullness of the nutrients that we can be obtaining. And lastly, emulsifiers. So lecithin, while it is a natural resource, it does often come from soy or sunflower, and it can just be an additional filler in most foods that could still remain more of a whole nutrient food. So, to kind of go on the other side of some of those, scary things in food, I thought we would discuss some of the latter end of common misconceptions when we see some of these different long names in our food labels. So, well, I would say, ascorbic acid, tocopherols, peroxidine, all of those, while they sound scary, are completely natural and normal and actually are some of those needed, benefited vitamins and minerals that we need throughout our day. So, ascorbic acid is also known as vitamin C. So, it's a great benefit and an additive in our foods to prevent that spoilage and boost the nutrient density of our foods. Tocopherols, also known as vitamin E, also acts as a natural antioxidant, as well as peroxidine, which is vitamin B5, which is essential for our brain development. And then some of the other food additives that you might see are functional texture agents. So guar gum is a fiber from the guar bean used for thickening, so a little bit of a beneficial to the lecithin, but a different additive there. Xanthan gum as well is a plant stabilized stabilizer to produce any type of fermentation we might be seeing in some of our foods. And a little bit different than what Nick mentioned earlier, I kind of wanted to just touch upon it for fun, is the propylene glycol. Now, there is something called propylene glycol alginate, which is just ever so slightly different, but it is actually a plant-based emulsifier and stabilizer and thickener that is based from seaweed. So a very scary sounding name can actually be something that we find all over the place, and very natural. So I just wanted to discuss some of the different macronutrients that most people should try to be obtaining every day. So from our proteins, we should be trying to hit about 10 to 35% of our daily calories, and that is highly to be used for our tissue repair, our enzyme synthesis, and our muscle preservation. Most of that can be found in poultry and fish. Healthy fats, you want to be hitting about 20 to 35% of your daily calories, and that really helps with our hormone synthesis and cell membrane integrity. Our complex carbs, a little different than our simple carbs. So when I say that, we're thinking more of our whole grains, is going to be about 45 to 65% of our daily calories, and that assists with cellular energy, sustained glucose supply. That's what really keeps us going. So another one, quinoa, another great resource, and sweet potatoes. And lastly, dietary fiber, which I think we're going to be seeing a little bit more as a specific food trend in this coming year, is our dietary fiber at 25% for females and about 38% or 38 grams for males. And that assists with a lot of our internal mobility of getting that food moving and as well as our glycemic management. So really helping our blood sugar stay steady throughout the day. So some of the micronutrients I wanted to touch upon was just calcium and vitamin D and potassium and magnesium. You're going to see these in a lot of those different vitamins and minerals that you might be needing, but might be lacking from, not using milk or not having a certain food that you don't like. You want to make sure that you're still hitting upon these different micronutrients because they also help synthesize our macronutrients and just keep everything going throughout our system. So once again, on the micronutrient, macronutrient, topic, I wanted to just discuss some of those different gaps that we're seeing in everyone throughout the world. A lot of adults are not actually receiving the quality of vitamin D that we are necessarily needing, especially here in Pennsylvania. A lot of our synthesis can also come from outside environment. A lot of what we can do is go out into the sun and we get nearly our full amount of vitamin D within about 15 minutes of outside exposure. So that really helps us with obtaining just our overall needs. Same with potassium. A lot of people are not hitting that. Another way to help upon that is just getting your electrolytes in. So even just putting a little bit more of, an electrolyte supplement in there or adding a little bit of salt to your water if you feel like you're kind of depleted can really be beneficial. Another one, dietary fiber. I think we'll be seeing a little bit of an increase in this year with a little bit more of a emphasis on fiber and magnesium deficiency. I would be interested to see as that has been a little bit more of an interesting topic for everyone. So there are some benefits to, some of these food trends, but there's still definitely a lot for us to still work upon. And just to touch upon some of the different nutritional deficiencies that might be occurring because of these different diets that we might be seeing is the physiological and physical changes. So, changes to taste and smell, differences in difficulty chewing or swallowing, limited range of motion, and decreased thirst and sensation. Those can really be or a detractor for, some people that are struggling with eating. Just that minimal loss of taste. A lot of people dealing with cancer treatment, anyone going through chemo, or as everyone has kind of experienced with COVID, well, that loss of taste and smell really detracted a lot of people from eating and enjoying food, which is the main basis for a lot of people. So that right there can detract and increase a lot of nutrition deficiencies in our area, and as well as the socioeconomic. So, Meals on Wheels is a huge proponent on making sure everyone is able to obtain those different foods that they need to just keep going. And cultural and benefit and beliefs that can really kind of make a difference in whether you're able to hit those goals. So again, just making sure that you're discussing those cultural beliefs and decisions with a licensed dietitian or, someone to provide that resource to you to ensure that you're kind of counteracting those choices. And just discussing some portion sizes. I know no one really knows what you're looking at. No one's going to pull out the, measuring cup every time that you're seeing food. So you got these, you got your hands. They're ready to go. Use them. So, a fistful of this is about 1 cup. So when you're thinking rice, you're going to go for about a fistful. If you're having any nuts, which are a great source but can be high in fat, you want to about scoop a handful in there, and that's about the size that you would have. Anything that you're thinking is fat or sugar, it's about the tip of your top of your finger. That's about a teaspoon. A thumb would be about 1 tablespoon. So 2 tablespoons, sorry, 2 tablespoons of peanut butter. And then about your palm would be where you're looking at for your protein. And just the power of eating together is a big social determinant for a lot of people. Nowadays, we are eating in front of TVs and, not really engaging in a lot of conversation. And that can really detract and increase those deficiencies that we're also seeing. So it reduces isolation and it assists with, that psychological sadness of, loneliness, depression, and it can really increase our food diversity as well, trying different things, engaging in conversations, and it allows the difference of expanding on our food diversity. So a lot of the different diets that you might be seeing out there nowadays are the Mediterranean diet, an excellent diet. When in doubt, that is a diet that you can absolutely follow to a T, and you will definitely be in a higher beneficial income or assessment, income assessment. We are hitting the end, and I am just about. It is Monday morning. So, the Mediterranean diet provides us a lot of those high polyunsaturated fats that are excellent for our cholesterol and those lean proteins that are wonderful for just keeping our system going. So, that is just about it. I think I had one little thing that I wanted to touch on. I have a quote from Julia Child. The Mind Diet is another wonderful diet that you can use and strategize with. It's a great combination of the DASH diet and the Mediterranean diet. So another lovely diet to try if you're trying to expand on your needs. So a step-by-step integration is just discussing, what I need to be doing, get a food log, swap out when you can for those beneficial healthy fats, complex carbs, lean proteins, making sure you're using your ready to go measuring cup by your hand, and just staying consistent with those needs. And finally, my biggest thing is just moderation. I never want anyone to take anything out of their diets. If they love chocolate, if you love sweets, if you have something that you truly love, everything is okay, but it is moderation that you need to manage it by. And that's my end. So thank you for, sticking by. You are in for a wonderful conversation with the remainder of our colleagues here. And if you have any questions, please, let me know. My contacts information's there, and I look forward to speaking with everyone else.
Thank you very much, Chloe. That was excellent information. Balanced diet, moderation. I think things that a lot of us think about, avoiding all these radical diets or viral information that's coming out. So much to think about and great information you gave us. Keeping things moving along, we have our next presenter, which is Amanda Picciabono. Amanda is the Director of Operations and Culinary Medicine at Kellen Foundation, where she leads programs focused on making healthy choices accessible through food, education, and community engagement. A magna cum laude graduate of the Culinary Institute of America, she holds degrees in baking and pastry arts, applied food studies, and business management. Passionate about the power of food as medicine, Amanda works alongside local farmers, healthcare professionals, and community partners to develop delicious, affordable, plant forward meals and programs that improve health outcomes. Her mission is to help individuals and families embrace healthier lifestyles by proving that nutritious food can be both accessible and exceptional in flavor. We're pleased to have Amanda join us today.
Thank you, Nick. I really appreciate that great introduction. And Chloe, fantastic job. I'm going to touch on some of the things that you had said before, so it'll be great. We'll be really highlighting similar things. So, good morning, everyone. As Nick said, my name is Amanda Picciabono. I am the Director of Operations in Culinary Medicine here at Kellen. Today, I really want to talk about the relationship between food as medicine, lifestyle medicine, and culinary medicine. They're big buzzwords now, as Chloe was saying. Those things are popping up all over social media and in the news, and I really want to dive into what they truly mean, and why knowing what to eat is really only half the battle. So, if food truly is medicine, then someone needs to help people understand how to use it in their everyday lives, because that's how we're going to actually see the shifts towards healthier lifestyles overall. So that's where culinary medicine comes in. But first, I want to touch on what Kellen is. So Kellen is a physician-led nonprofit located here in Tadmey, Pennsylvania, that helps people prevent and reverse chronic disease through practical education, food access, and long-term lifestyle support. We are rooted in communities and guided by medicine, but truly, really built on trust. That's the big thing here. Wherever we go, whatever relationships we have, we really want to keep those relationships going so people can trust what we're teaching them and what we're bringing to them. So through that, we have hands-on teaching kitchens, mobile market sites, as well as school programs and lifestyle medicine intervention programs. We're working to shift the culture towards healthier living every day here in the Lehigh Valley. So just a few pictures here. You have myself as well as the co-founder, Dr. Megan Grega. She's board certified in lifestyle medicine, and she has helped shaped most of our school programs as well as our intervention program information so that we're able to help people in the communities as well as in the schools. And then on the right-hand side, we have Mr. Eric Ruth. He is the other co-founder, and he's on one of our mobile market sites helping to distribute some of the local food we purchase from farmers. So moving along on how we are incorporated into the Lehigh Valley, we have four different pillars that we truly focus on. So one of the main ones and one of my favorites is Kellen Schools. So we have classroom and garden-based learning that helps kids build lifelong healthy habits. So we are in 46 different elementary schools, 9 school districts. We get to see about 11,000 kiddos annually, which is fantastic in our 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade programming. And in these programs, we teach kiddos about healthy eating and really the basics. So what is real food? What is healthy food? We dive into nutrition label reading, like Chloe was talking about earlier. So looking at what is in our food, the ingredients, the fat content, the salt, the sugar, protein, fiber, like things that adults have a hard time with. So how do we teach these kiddos who are seeing all over social media and on the news, like Takis and these new drinks and just all the stuff that is available to them, how can we make them food detectives themselves and be able to look at the nutrition labels to make healthy choices. And then in fifth grade, we talk about how to build their own toolkit. So, how to be a food detective. What about when we're going out to eat? If something is grilled or baked or crispy, how can we figure out what is a healthier option for us? And at these schools, we also have community gardens. So we teach the kiddos not only to figure out how to make healthy choices themselves, but that doesn't go very far if they can't access the healthy food at home. So we have the community gardens so that the kiddos can learn how to plant the food, but then their families can learn and be able to harvest from it all throughout the summer. In addition to that food access piece, we have our Kellen Eat Real Food mobile markets. So it is a mobile farmers market on wheels that we go into food insecure areas and neighborhoods, but also offices and schools. So we have 3 full mobile market sites in Easton, Allentown, but we also have 29 drop-off locations throughout the valley. So people can pre-order healthy prepared meals. We purchase from local farmers to be able to get as much local food out to the community as possible. And the mobile market sites are open to anyone, but we do also accept EBT, WIC, FNMP, as well as healthy food prescription vouchers. The healthy prepared food on these mobile markets is made by our commercial kitchen, so Kellen Culinary. I was lucky enough when I came on to Kellen 10 years ago to build this kitchen from the ground up. It's awesome. It's a teaching kitchen, it's a meal prepping kitchen, but now we have also shifted to on and off site catering for all different types of events. So, this is a really cool model that I haven't seen many places because while we do make food for pre-orders and we do make food for off-site caterings, we also get medical students and residents in for teaching kitchen aspects so that they can learn how to better cook for themselves but help their patients as well. So tied into that is our Kellen Lifestyle Medicine. So this is our evidence-based sustained lifestyle change support groups with outcome tracking and support over time. So we do teaching kitchens throughout the Lehigh Valley, culinary demos, but we also run private and public therapeutic lifestyle change programs that I'll touch on a little bit later. So, what all of this means, lots of words, right? I'm talking about food as medicine, lifestyle medicine, culinary medicine. I think the American Heart Association really defines food as medicine very well. So, they say that it can be defined as the provision of healthy food resources to prevent, manage, or treat specific clinical conditions in coordination with the healthcare sector. An estimated 90% of the 4 trillion, and I did say trillion, annual cost of healthcare in the United States is spent on medical care for chronic disease. And for many of these diseases, diet is a major risk factor. So even modest improvements in diet could have a significant impact. So what Chloe was saying earlier about just shifting slight things and making little adjustments to your diet can really have a big impact. And food is not a replacement for healthcare by any means. That is not what I'm saying. But it is one of the most powerful tools we have to prevent and manage diseases from the lifestyle aspect. So, the summary of recommendations, if we're looking at our plate, and there are many different recommendations out there, but a very like toned down version of it is follow a low sodium, high potassium dietary pattern that includes consumption of ample servings of fruits and vegetables, whole grains and legumes, and trying to limit the amounts of saturated fat, red meat, processed red meat, and processed foods containing added sugars and sodium, and refined grains, such as sugar sweetened beverages, is the preferred nutritional approach. Obviously, if there are certain, everybody is different. So this is like the toned down version. But when they, researchers and medical organizations review the evidence, recommendations are remarkably consistent along these lines. Let's try to eat more fruits and vegetables and whole grains and beans and trying to limit things that are processed. If something turns your tongue blue, unless it's beetroot powder or something that's more natural, the Takis version or Gatorade is probably not doing your health much of a benefit. So moving on to lifestyle medicine, some people might have heard it, some people might have not. Years ago, it was thought of as hippy dippy medicine, but it is actually certified and very, very real. So the American College of Lifestyle Medicine does a really great graphic that I have up here that describes it pretty well. So Nutrition is incredibly important, but it's only one pillar of the health. So we have whole food, plant predominant nutrition. We have physical activity, very important. Restorative sleep, avoidance of risky substances like alcohol or tobacco, social connection, and stress management. As we are seeing in this crazy world, it would be hard to find someone that could look at this and say, I do all six of those pillars fantastic. I know I can't, and I'm teaching people about it. And so when we are going out into the school programs, when we're leading our intervention programs, and we're talking to people, even just bringing attention to it, being like, hey, what does your physical activity look like? You don't have to go to the gym every day, but are you moving? Are you going on a walk? Can we switch in and have some social connection with that? Can you go out with your parents or your friends and do two pillars at once, or definitely eating with your family or friends and not watching a screen? Sleep. I have twin toddlers, so I'm not sleeping very much right now, but that is a pillar of this stage of life. But try and get 8 to 10 hours of real sleep, not sleep with a screen in the background. And also being aware of our stress management. Mental health is definitely at the forefront of a lot of people's brains, no pun intended, but we really have to focus on how can we help our mental health. You can help with dietary, but also just paying attention to maybe I need a second. Maybe I need to step back and breathe. Maybe I need to go out for a walk or take time with people that I care about. So, lifestyle medicine is a really great encompass of all of these pillars. And for the next slide, culinary medicine ties in pretty well to it. So I am not a doctor. My background, as Nick said, I went to the Culinary Institute of America, did culinary and pastry, and worked in New York City as a pastry chef. And I was enjoying what I did. I was making stunning desserts, and I was getting to make things for like the Tribeca Film Festival and serve cool people and all the stuff that in culinary you are taught you've made it. And I was looking at my weeks. I was working like 60, 70-hour weeks, and I just couldn't find how I was helping people. Like, yeah, their taste buds was enjoying the pastries and the elaborate things that I was making for them. But in that moment, it was really just that moment that they were enjoying it. Their bodies weren't benefiting from it later. So when I went back to school for applied food studies and to dive into this lifestyle medicine world and culinary medicine, I really enjoyed that you can take that knowledge of food and help people because lifestyle medicine tells us what to do, right? So eating more whole foods and plant forward and increasing fruits and vegetables, reducing the ultra processed food and improving our overall dietary quality. But I could lecture on that all day. And if somebody doesn't have the access to that food or somebody doesn't have the knowledge on how to create that food at home, even if I gave them a basket of kale and apples and pomegranate, they'd look at it and be like, what the heck do I do? So with culinary medicine, we are able to teach people how to do that. So they work on cooking skills, how to read nutrition labels, how to meal plan and budget-friendly meal preparation. Because we are so involved in all the different aspects of the community in the Lehigh Valley, we really focus on affordability. It's a misconception that to eat healthy is more expensive. There are ways to do it. Obviously, if you went to the grocery store and got all pre-prepared plant forward meals and all processed, like that would be more expensive. Or if we're having berries in January and it's not in season, that could be more expensive. But if we're really focusing on trying to eat seasonally, trying to eat local, really incorporating things like beans and rice and grains and tofu and stuff that is more on the affordability scale, and then also learning how to cook from scratch. Now, I said I'm a busy mom. I do not have time to cook from scratch all the time. So the meal planning, the bulk preparing that you can use the different meals in a lot of different ways is also a good skill to have. And through the culinary medicine, we teach about flavor building techniques and also the behavior change through hands-on practice. So one of my favorite things is doing cooking demos with kiddos because so many people's ideas with kids is that they're not going to eat that. It's salad. It's blank. But actually, if you get their hands in the garden, they help grow in the third and fourth grade programs. And then you take those greens or that produce and they help make something. They're at least willing to try it. And a lot of times, even if they don't like it on the first time, we can talk about our taste buds shifting and us starting to really incorporate those type of foods and maybe look at different ways to eat it. So for me, with culinary medicine, I like to focus on what we can add to our plate and not necessarily take away, because that's the sustainable way to do this. Because as soon as you feel restricted, and if it doesn't align with how busy you are or where you can get your food or how you can cook it, it's not going to be a long-term solution. So, one of our friends, Dr. David L. Katz, wrote this awesome book, The Truth About Food. If you're looking for something to add onto your summer reading list, I would highly recommend it. Um, it's very funny why pandas eat bamboo and people get bamboozled. So often people are, okay, if I'm going plant forward, how am I going to get fiber and protein and all the stuff, all my nutrients? And like I said, I'm not telling you to take anything off of your plate. Let's just add things on. So a great quote for this book is, for the food industry, confusion is profitable, as Nick had mentioned earlier. There is no confusion, though, among experts. A diet high in plant foods, such as beans, vegetables, nuts and seeds, fruits and whole grains, and low in processed foods is best for health and longevity. And there's more than one way to eat badly, and the American culture seems committed to trying them all. So, as we see, in the American lifestyle medicine world, they have nicknamed the standard American diet sad because it is a little sad. Just we are very much eating, mostly it seems from laboratories or companies or bags and boxes, and not as much simple. And getting back to eating real food from the ground. So if we can try to shift more that way, that would be fantastic. But overall, people who eat more whole plant foods tend to have better health outcomes as they get older. So, what does that mean? Again, when I say plant predominant, I'm not saying vegan or vegetarian. I'm not saying that's a necessary thing you have to do. I'm just saying that let's try to make the plants the foundation of your plate, right? So, if we're able to really highlight vegetables, fruits, grains, legumes, roots and tubers, fungi, nuts and seeds, and herbs and spices, and we can increase the proportion of these nutrient-dense foods, rather than focusing on the strict rules, by default, you're going to take away the bigger portions of maybe that pre-processed foods and things that are not as good for us. As Chloe stated, if someone likes chocolate, I don't want them to give it up. I love chocolate. I love chocolate and birthday cake, and I will forever eat them. But most of the time, I really am trying to fill my plate with a lot of these things. So during the times that I'm having chocolate and birthday cake, great. I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying it with people that I care about, getting that social connection. And then I'm having these healthier foods most of the time. So why eat more plates? Plants. Don't eat plates. That won't go well for you. Why eat more plants? The fiber aspect is definitely a big one, right? Keeps us regular, wonderful, but there's a lot of different things that also they help with. So heart health, plants help reduce cholesterol and blood pressure and inflammation in the body. Nutrient density, so loaded with fiber, vitamins, and antioxidants. Gut health, so it does support our digestion and our healthy microbiome. The more different types of plants and fruits and vegetables that you can get in your diet on a weekly basis, your microbiome will be very thankful. If you can get some fermented stuff in there like sauerkraut or kimchi, that'll help too. Sustainability, a plant forward diet has a lower environmental impact. So I think that should be important to all of us as we really look what's on our plate. And flavor. So in the SAD, or standard American diet, the cheap and easy way to add flavor is by adding copious amounts of sugar, salt, and fat. But there are a variety of other ways to flavor pack our food. It just takes a little bit more time than just adding those ingredients in. So, incorporating different cooking methods. So, grilling or roasting or baking or air frying, olive sauteing, relying more on spices and vinegars, as well as filling our meals with a variety of different ingredients. Your taste buds will definitely thank you for sure. So this slide is a good reminder that healthy eating doesn't require complete lifestyle overhaul. Small swaps can have a meaningful impact. So when I am thinking of working with someone in our intervention programs and they're like, well, Amanda, I have a fully stocked fridge and pantry. I'm not going to throw that stuff out. What can I start to do to just add little bits of things in here? So when you look at your plate, butter and oil, you can swap in some stuff. I'm not saying totally omit if you don't want to, but when you're baking, you can use applesauce or banana or pumpkin. You could even do Greek yogurt instead of sour cream. When you are cooking, you can use vegetable stock or tahini. I like to use extra virgin olive oil, cold pressed olive oil, as my healthy fat of choice. It's higher in nutrients than just your plain old canola oil. For sugar, so opt for natural sweeteners like maple syrup, agave, dates. You could do fruit, or when you're baking, you can just, if banana bread recipe calls for 2 cups of sugar, you could do 1.5. Like you could just start to slowly pare it down. Milk, I base our success rate off of Starbucks not charging anymore for plant-based milks. It's more wildly available these days. So 5 years ago, you'd say I want oat milk and a latte, and it would cost you like $1.50. Now it's not that much, if anything. So plant-based milk, such as like soy, almond, or oat milk, are really great to be swapping in if you want a plant-based option. Please be aware that they are not used interchangeably sometimes. So my poor dad years ago tried to make mac and cheese with vanilla almond milk. Don't do that. It does not turn out well. But you could use unsweetened almond milk. You could use unsweetened oat milk. I use coconut milk a lot of times when we're doing creamy tomato soup as a creamy option instead of actual heavy cream. Soy milk is my favorite thing in coffee to foam up and have lattes. A lot of people ask me about the soy milk. There was that misconception years ago that the higher estrogen levels, it shouldn't be consumed by men, but that is debunked. So you don't have to worry about that. And luckily, it is a high protein source. So in a cup, it's normally anywhere from 6 grams to 9 grams of protein. So if you're trying to have a little bit more protein in your breakfast or something, that's a good option. Eggs, you can do like a tofu scramble for something like that. You can utilize flax eggs, chia eggs, or aquafaba in baking. Please don't try to make scrambled eggs with flax or chia eggs. It will not turn out well for you. But they are a great option, and especially to have on hand for baking. Not always do I have eggs in my fridge, or my kids eat all of them for breakfast. So you can make a flax or a chia egg with 1 tablespoon of flax meal or chia and 2.5 tablespoons of water. And it can be quick on a pinch and you can still bake your items. Salt, like I was talking about earlier, on average, Americans are eating double, if not more, than our recommended salt for the day. You should be trying to have less than a teaspoon a day, and that's not just like sprinkling on top. Obviously, that changes if people have chronic disease or if they're older, if they're children, but that's a good guideline around that. And so we need to be aware that that food, the salt, is what we put on food, but also it's in our pre-made foods, right? Our packaged foods. Even a milkshake from Chick-fil-A has salt in it, so we have to be careful. So enhancing flavor with use of fresh herbs, spices, and again, different cooking methods, vinegar, citrus juices. Think of like when you're making guacamole, you add lime to it. That definitely enhances the flavor, and you can do that in other foods as well. And then cheese. So I love cheese. I will never tell people to stop eating cheese, but it is high in saturated fat. So limiting our amounts of cheese is good. So maybe having guacamole instead of cheese on a burrito bowl, or hummus on a sandwich as a spread, or blending some nutritional yeast or blended soaked cashews or beans into your mac and cheese sauce to kind of get more bang for your buck nutrition wise is a good idea. And then, how do I make meals filling and exciting? One concern I hear very often is, won't I be hungry? I am not telling you to eat salads for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I would be hungry, or at least very bored. The answer is no, but you have to focus on building your meals correctly. So, like, technically, Oreos are vegan, right? That would technically, and that's why I say I don't like to label things, but it's more plant forward because fiber and protein are key. texture matters, and healthy fats really matter. So we have to look at what's getting onto our plate. So prioritizing the fiber and protein with your whole grains, your beans, your lentils, starchy root vegetables like sweet potatoes. They provide lasting energy and satisfaction. You can pair this with the 3 ounces of the lean meat or fish that Chloe was talking about earlier. Don't forget the texture. Again, if I'm just eating mush or pureed, that's not going to make healthy food eating fun. So, one of my favorite foods is sweet and spicy tofu bowls. So, we have crispy air fried tofu over some grains and some sauteed and steamed veg. Lots of texture going on there, really good. Include your healthy fats, so your avocados, nuts, seeds, tahini, and then experiment with stuff like global flavors. Get out of your comfort zone. Try Mediterranean. Try all different types that not just is your typical, I feel around here is a lot of Italian. There's a lot of ziti and things. I'm not knocking ziti, but I'm saying there's some other fun things that you could try. And switch up cooking methods and use fresh seasonal ingredients. Supporting local is really important and really supporting the farmers around us that are growing this great food has less of a distance to travel, which is big, and you're also getting to eat as the season goes on, so the food will taste better than if you're eating food out of season most of the time. And your taste buds will thank you. So, our taste buds get used to what we're eating. We teach the kiddos in the school programs that you get a new set of taste buds every couple months. So, what that means is that if I'm eating the standard American diet consistently, my taste buds are going to get used to that. So, then when I have like peach from down the road at Shoals, it's probably not going to taste as sweet or as delicious as the milkshake I had the night before. But one of the most encouraging things is that your taste buds can change. So the more we eat whole foods, the more we begin to appreciate their natural flavors. Foods that once might have seemed bland because they didn't have as much salt or sugar or fat, all of a sudden become much satisfying, and the highly processed foods become less appealing. So healthy eating isn't about giving things up. It's really about discovering new foods and flavors and how we can incorporate them on our plate. So, the big thing that I do want to highlight here again is cooking and sharing meals should be joyful and creative experience. So, a lot of the times when people are talking about eating healthy, they talk about feeling like very alone. Like you're at a barbecue and you're like, no, I'm sorry, I'm not going to have that cheeseburger right now. I'm not going to have that hot dog. I'm trying to eat healthy. And really, we should just be trying to enjoy our food with the people that we like and eating as good as we can. But again, just getting that social connection and being aware of how we're fueling our bodies is very important too. So I always like to recommend some great sites if people want to like dip their toes in. Social media is great, online is great. One of the most disheartening things, though, I feel is if I find a cool recipe online, I spend all this time making it and it stinks. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this now? So these three sites, Minimalist Baker, Plant You, and Love and Lemons are three of the like most tried and true places that I've found recipes like 90% of the time work great. And they have a wide variety of wherever you are on the spectrum. So if you just want to get more beans in your diet, Plant You uses beans all the time. If you're looking to eat more seasonally and just have more veggies, but still highlight protein, like plant-based proteins, but also meal proteins and cheese, Love and Lemons is fantastic. And then Minimalist Baker really works with like dairy-free, gluten-free, like really playing with all of those different stuff. And all of them do a really good job. So I would highly recommend if you're trying to add a few new meals to your rotation to check these out. And I think you'll be really happy. So, key takeaways from today. I just would like you to remember that food really is one of the most powerful tools we have for improving our health. And culinary medicine really helps bridge the gap between knowing what to do and then learning how to do it for ourselves and how to incorporate it into our daily lives. Healthy eating does not have to be expensive, complicated, or restrictive. We can make it really tune into what you need and what your family needs and how you lived your life. And rather than asking what we need to take away, really focus on what can I add to my plate to make it more enjoyable and more nutrition focused. If you have any questions, my email is up there. It's amanda@kellen.org. If you want recipes or suggestions, I'd be happy to help. And if you are looking to incorporate some more plant-forward meals into your weekly meal rotation and you want to see where any of our food drop-offs are in the Lehigh Valley, our website is healthyfood.kellen.org, and you can kind of dip your toes and try some plant-forward prepared meal options. But thank you everyone for having me on, and I'm excited for the rest of the call.
Thank you so much, Amanda. This is great information. Some highlights for me is, starting early, teaching healthy habits right from the beginning, real food, limiting the processed food, balancing your lifestyle entirely, more plants, and of course, birthday cake. I mean, my understanding is that's eggs, milk, and flour. So I believe that's a health food, from what I understand.
And just a
Um,
little sugar, just a little bit.
just a tiny bit. For everybody watching as well, if you have questions, please go ahead and put them in the chat because we are going to address them at the end. For now, though, we're going to move to our next presenter, which is Jennifer Brereton. Jennifer is a physician assistant specializing in gastroenterology at St. Luke's University Health Network, where she provides comprehensive care for patients with digestive health conditions. Before becoming a physician assistant, Jennifer worked for 5 years as a registered dietitian nutritionist in pediatric nutrition support. She also holds a Master's of Science degree in nutritional science. Combining her backgrounds in medicine and nutrition, Jennifer is passionate about educating patients on the role of diet in digestive health, chronic disease prevention, and overall well being. Her unique perspective allows her to bridge the gap between nutrition science and clinical practice. Thank you for joining us today, Jennifer.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's my pleasure to spend some time with you all this morning. And thank you to our presenters before, Amanda and Chloe. I think you'll notice a lot of similar themes, threads that weave within all of these presentations, as we kind of go through. I hope that a lot of those become takeaways. So starting off, my main objective of this talk, with all of these nutrition trends and, social media things that we see, fearful concern for food ingredients and other things we're consuming, my goal is that we can hopefully discuss some of these things and ideally reduce kind of the fear and confusion around a lot of these foods. And my hope is that we can feel empowered to make improved food choices that overall will be beneficial to us and our long-term health. So much of what we talked about today, I'll also be touching on too, some of these things: protein, fiber, processed foods, a little bit, what is in our foods with these food additives, and then also some practical takeaways. So one thing I wanted to emphasize is a trend that we're seeing a lot on social media right now, that is with protein. You may have heard it seen or called protein maxing. It's this concept of people really upping their protein intake sometimes up to more than 150 grams per day. And truth be told, the data that we have suggests against needing that amount of protein actually for the average person. Our guidelines for a long time have shown that the average healthy adult needs about 0.8 grams per kilo per day of protein. So for the average, 150-pound adult, that's about 68 kilograms, ends up being about 55 grams of protein per day. So significantly less than what we're seeing with this protein maxing trend. Of course, there's other conditions, older age, being more frail, of course, being an athlete, participating in weight or endurance training that will change those protein needs. And there is a little bit of newer evidence to suggest that possibly the average person may benefit from a little more protein than that minimum of 0.8 grams per kilo. So aiming for something like 1 to 1.2 grams per kilo per day, somewhere for the same weight range of 68 to 82 grams of protein per day is reasonable, but often we don't need protein in excess. Of course, too much or too little of any nutrient will cause issues. With too little protein, we see loss of muscle mass, inability to keep that lean body mass up, frailty, impaired immune function, as our antibodies are created from these amino acids that we absorb from protein intake. On the flip side, we also see too much protein can result in weight gain, strain on the kidneys, and underlying kidney disorders. And most importantly, nutrient displacement, which has been touched on a little bit today, and I'd like to emphasize some more. The concept of nutrient replacement, kind of what Amanda and Chloe have touched on, is if we are over consuming a certain type of nutrient, what does it mean that we are not able to consume in our diet as a result of that? Protein is something that we often meet or exceed our needs. However, fiber is one thing that most Americans do not consume enough of. So, what is fiber? Why does it matter? It's an indigestible carbohydrate that's contained in fruits, vegetables, nuts, beans, legumes, the roots and tubers, like Amanda was talking about, and whole grains. And there's many benefits to fiber that I want to highlight today. So how much fiber do we actually need? The guidelines tell us that for every 1,000 calories consumed, we need about 14 grams of fiber. So based on typical caloric needs for men and women, that breaks out to about 25 to 28 grams per day for women, 35 to 38 for men. And we see the average intake significantly less, around 15 grams per day in women, 18 grams per day in men. Overall, the data we have suggests that no more than about 90% or less than 5 to 10% of Americans actually meet the recommended fiber goals. And so that's one thing I want to emphasize today, kind of like Amanda said, rather than taking away things, what can we add to help our diet and overall longevity? So health benefits of fiber are many, and this is something I talk about every single day in the gastroenterology clinic here at St. Luke's, where we see a lot of issues, resulting from low fiber intake. So one thing I speak about on a day-to-day basis in the clinic room is how fiber can help improve bowel function. There's different types of fiber, contained within foods, soluble, insoluble fiber, each have a role, and they can help with increasing stool bulk in those that struggle with constipation, can help improve consistency in constipation, also the stool bulking and diarrhea, and it can overall promote regularity. We also see significant benefits that are well validated in the studies with cardiovascular health. So higher fiber intake is associated with lower LDL cholesterol, which is the one we often hear as that bad cholesterol. Overall, reducing cardiovascular disease risk and overall mortality can also help with blood sugar control. So as a food is intake with a fiber, or a naturally fiber containing food, it will actually reduce the post-meal glucose spike that we see with intake of things. And this overall improves our insulin sensitivity, reduces risk of type 2 diabetes as well, keeps blood sugars more stable. Weight management is something that comes up too, as fiber helps to increase satiety. So that feeling of feeling full for longer with reduced need to fill the continued need to eat. So overall reducing hunger and sort of that idea of nutrition or nutrient displacement again is if we're having fibrous foods in our diet, they often tend to be moderately low in calories compared to other foods, that are processed in nature. Therefore, lower energy density in our meals and overall lower calories, and that contributes to some weight management in beneficial ways. And then another thing we talk about a lot in GI clinic, a very hot topic in the world right now is microbiome health. Fiber is actually a fuel for those beneficial bacteria in our stomach. So you may have heard about it as a prebiotic. And of course, you can buy over-the-counter supplements, prebiotics, probiotics. We know that fiber can help to promote those short-chain fatty acids, helps in a variety of ways in our gut. And so many people ask me in clinic, do I need a probiotic? The short story, we need more data to really say whether the average person would benefit from that. There's some conditions where it can be beneficial, but overall, fiber could potentially be the most beneficial thing as we feed those good bacteria that we already have. And then, of course, reducing risk of chronic disease. So higher fiber intake is associated with lower risk of heart disease, type 2 diabetes, colorectal cancer specifically, but a variety of other cancers as well. And then overall improves all-cause mortality. Some of the strongest evidence we have consistently points to increased intake of fiber-rich foods. And I'd point your attention here to the Choose My Plate, which replaced what we saw as like the old food pyramid years ago, which shows essentially half of our plate actually being filled with fruits, vegetables, significant fiber intake, making half of our grains whole grains, which also contribute to fiber intake. So overall, if we're striving for this, ideally we're meeting those fiber goals as well. Why do people struggle with fiber? Often I find in clinic, people don't know what fiber is. So a reminder, fruits, vegetables, nuts, beans, lentils, whole grains. Others, struggle to get enough fiber in, which is understandable in our diet. Like Amanda said, is kind of sad. But oftentimes people will increase their intake too rapidly, and that can cause a lot of symptoms that then deter them from wanting to continue to eat fiber. So, the average intake, 10 to 15 grams per day, increasing that to what we recommend is the daily intake can cause gas, bloating, cramping, increasing bowel movements that are obviously these untoward things no one wants to experience. So I always counsel my patients to gradually increase the intake, by 3 to 5 grams per week. And make sure that you're drinking sufficient fluids as well with this, because that's an important part of incorporating more fiber. So, for example, you could begin one week, start by adding a serving of fruit or vegetable to your diet if you don't already have that. The next week, maybe make a swap of choosing a more complex carbohydrate with, more fiber, like wheat bread versus white bread. And then in subsequent weeks can continue to add on beans, or other types of fibrous foods. So just to highlight very quickly, and I won't go through all of these, but oftentimes I find patients thinking, hey, I eat so many salads, so I'm getting a ton of fiber in my diet. But it's actually a common misconception that although leafy greens provide a lot of vitamins and minerals and are certainly essential for many, functional processes in our body, they don't provide as much fiber. So emphasizing here, fruits, vegetables, things we don't always think about, like avocado, as providing fiber, as well as chia seeds, oats, and some of those other whole grain options, as well as nuts. So take home points, majority of us are not getting enough fiber, but there's many benefits. And so oftentimes we find ourselves worrying about things like protein, the seed oils, additives, these detoxes, kind of like Chloe talked about. But really we should be worried about, are we getting enough fiber? And this is not, based in exact evidence, but I'd say more anecdotal experience working as a clinician and dietitian. I would say that if we would double our fiber intake, or at least meet those recommended intake amounts, our health impact would be far greater than eliminating any single ingredient that seems to be trending on social media. And with that being said, I do want to touch on other things that we see, impacting our health. And so just to look through here, are all processed foods bad? And looking at this picture, are all of these processed or not? Truth be told, they actually are in some way or another. Broccoli florets, very different than Doritos, pinto beans as well. But really, all of these foods are processed in some way. And so on the next slide, we can discuss why. So there's a difference between some minimally processed foods and ultra processed foods. Minimally processed meaning they've been altered in some way, but still have preserved, nutritional benefits. So frozen broccoli was preserved to stay longer in the freezer to be eaten at a later time. Canned beans can stay on the shelf for a long time. They went through a canning process. Yogurt, fermentation, peanut butter, peanuts, sometimes salt, a little oil added, but still required some grinding. Whole wheat bread, also that preparation. Versus ultra processed foods is what we really think about when we think about these processed foods and what we should try to minimize in our diets. So soda, chips, candies, packaged pastries, cereals, all of those are what we aim to minimize more than these minimally processed foods. So the concerns that we see with UPF or ultra processed foods are they're naturally lower in fiber. So, that's one mark against them, especially based on what we've been talking about, the many health benefits of fiber. They're also higher in calories. I'll let you read here the numbers, but basically gram for gram, they're higher in calories. So comparing lentils compared to potato chips, significant difference in calories, protein, obviously fat, and then fiber. They're also easier to overeat. They're engineered to, be delicious to make us want to reach for more. And they tend to require less chewing, so we eat more and then it produces less satiety as well. And then we know too that foods in their natural form tend to stabilize our metabolism and provide greater satiety. So essentially eating a whole apple, will provide fiber that intact cellular structure and matrix of the food that tends to satisfy us more, versus if that food was to be more processed, in the form of apple juice that contains similar sugars, still some good vitamins and nutrients, but negligible fiber. And so therefore, keeping in mind that food in the whole, often our bodies will have better metabolic response to. So common food additives that we see, and one question I would pose to you, this kind of goes off of what's been said earlier too about food additives is, would you eat a food containing dihydrogen monoxide? And then have you eaten one? And what would you say if I told you dihydrogen monoxide is actually the scientific name for water? So hopefully we've all consumed plenty of this. The point being that scientific names can sound scary, even when describing very normal, physiologically needed foods or substances. So the same idea, and this was emphasized earlier about vitamins and minerals, their scientific names, often I see on social media, can cause some fearful reaction. And it's just because we don't always feel familiar with these scientific names. And so just being aware that as we read ingredient lists and labels, sometimes our foods have been fortified in beneficial ways, and not every ingredient do we need to be concerned about. Food additives, though, are typically added to improve, food safety, shelf life, the texture, sometimes the stability of the formulation, and then, of course, flavor and appearance as well. And so I won't go through all of these, as we've talked about some of them already. And the point really is, there is sometimes benefit in the food industry to use these additives and to preserve. And the question is, do we need to eliminate them all from our diet, or is there a place for some of these, in a moderately healthy diet? So there's a lot of food additives, and truth be told, we don't have data to support that they all have adverse health effects. Obviously, reducing intake of processed foods, I think, is overall beneficial, knowing that whole foods are going to be more beneficial in the long term for us. But I don't think we have to worry, excessively about these things, but obviously keep these things in mind. A few different ingredients that do have more scientific backing include nitrites and nitrates, which we often see in processed meats. They can help prevent the growth of bacteria, preserve color of these meats as well. But there is some relatively robust research to show that processed meats are linked to colorectal cancers, which in GI we're seeing more and more of in younger people these days. However, the studies cannot truly delineate, whether this is related to the meat itself and the way that it was processed, or if it's because of these nitrites and nitrates specifically. So there's always this nuance, in nutrition and nutritional science, where we can't always perfectly study these things because we can't separate out all these additives or study them in isolation. Another one that comes up a lot is artificial sweeteners that we see often in diet sodas and sugar-free products. And there's some evidence to suggest that it may have impact on the gut microbiome, but the research is still very mixed. As of now, the current evidence supports that there's safety with these products as long as they're used, within established daily intake levels. So really, the point here is the dose determines the poison, and moderation is key. So even good things can be dangerous in excess. So water can be dangerous in excess, can cause depletion and dilution of our sodium stores or hyponatremia that can lead to seizures and death. Same with iron or vitamin A. Obviously, in deficiency can cause issues, but in excess can also cause organ damage and toxicity. Same idea with these additives or specifically artificial sweeteners. Based on some of the studies we have, which are in rodents and not necessarily, in humans, some of the studies suggest that someone would need to take quite an excessive amount of soda daily over an entire lifetime to exceed the safe limit established. And keeping in mind that we cannot extrapolate our exact health and the mechanisms of our bodies compared to rodents, but knowing that it's probably, okay to, see if there's some artificial sweeteners in our diet and eliminate those in excess. But if we do have some exposure, no need to be too super fearful like you may see on social media. So overall, there can be a role for minimally processed foods, those like we talk about whole grain bread, peanut butter, canned foods, and things like that. And instead of asking, is this food processed, and being really worried about that, we should ask, what role does this food play in my overall dietary pattern? It's going to be difficult in our day and age, in our culture of convenience and fast food, to totally avoid processed foods, but we certainly can reduce our intake of ultra processed foods and build a diet where minimally processed or unprocessed foods make up the majority of what we eat. There's not strong data to support the elimination of most food additives, and that continues to be studied. So we'll, follow those studies as they come. But overall, replacing highly processed foods with whole foods that are high in fiber, vitamins, and minerals is overall going to be beneficial for us and the prevention of chronic disease. So, similar to what was shared before, too, I'd like to emphasize, too, as we do encounter a lot of information online, things that can cause us to be skeptical or at least give us pause. So I always advise my clients, be skeptical if someone is promising you a cure for multiple and related diseases, claims that doctors or, the medical practice is trying to hide the truth, uses testimonials instead of data, or when they do use data, use low quality studies or extrapolate from animal-based models, sort of as we talked about before. I always advise caution if someone's selling the solution they're promoting or in labels entire food groups as toxic or oversimplifies and tries to say that one nutrient can explain all of the health problems. And then overall, paying attention to how a message makes you feel. If you overall feel fearful or scared, it may not necessarily be based in scientific evidence or truth, because we know a lot of the data that we do have is very nuanced and not always black and white. So looking out for trusted nutrition resources, and some of these were shared earlier, but dietary guidelines for Americans and a lot of other online resources that are based on evidence-based data, professional medical organizations, academic health centers that are trustworthy and put out a lot of information to the public. And then, of course, providing a lot of information from healthcare professionals is always beneficial, especially registered dietitians who have significant training in nutritional science and the application of it as well. So in conclusion, to summarize, most of us are probably getting enough protein, but not getting enough fiber. And so remembering these multitude of short and long-term benefits from fiber and trying to intake those more often than processed foods. And knowing that, of course, avoiding certain food additives is likely beneficial for our health, but not becoming so fearful or stressed about our diet that it impairs our ability to, eat in moderation and enjoy a variety of foods. So as further data comes out, like I said, we'll continue to follow and learn more, but overall, emphasizing whole foods as a way to improve our dietary patterns and relying on evidence-based information as well will definitely be beneficial for us in the long term. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. That was excellent information, and just some of the highlights there too. Fiber, really important. And obviously some ideas of how do you increase that. The microbiome health, I hear so much about that. I think that that's a really interesting topic. Seems like everybody was focused on we have to have a balanced diet and watch out for ultra processed foods. The ultra was interesting in yours for sure, that everything is kind of processed. And I really like these scientific names don't necessarily equal bad. So, folks, we only have a few minutes for questions. So I'm going to go ahead and give everybody just one. One that came up early in this, Chloe, this was actually directed for you, as you mentioned magnesium deficiencies. What are some symptoms of that, and what is good nutritionally or through supplements?
Yeah, so a lot of our magnesium is used for regulating our nervous system function. So when you're looking at a decrease or a deficiency in that, you're going to think, poor sleep quality. You might have some tingling in your hands, some muscle spasms. It really helps our body as a whole function and keep everything just going through an energy production. I have noticed, and I did kind of touch upon it, but I have noticed it also becoming a bigger trend as of the last couple of years with it being thrown in a lot of more of the sleep supplements because it has some beneficial entities in providing that natural decrease in our stress function, so helping us at the end of the day in reduction and helping us sleep. So a lot of the different symptoms that you're seeing are, again, muscle spasms, different nervous system dysfunctions, and along those lines. The increased amount that you need is still very minimal, so it's in the I want to say it's milligrams. So I actually was going to pull it up just to confirm the dietary amount. It's about 310 to about 420 milligrams between adults daily. And you can find that through a lot of different normal whole food sources. So think any types of nuts and seeds, you're going to have a nice amount from that. A lot of green leaves, green leafy vitamin rich foods. But you can also do it in a supplement as well. But I do always kind of take heed and do your research when it comes to different supplements and what they have. There are some different forms of magnesium in supplement-based forms, especially magnesium glycinate versus magnesium citrate. And you definitely want to focus a little bit more on the magnesium glycinate side, just to make sure that you're getting the actual necessary form that you need for your system. And just doing a lot of research on what is in those supplements. So when you're looking online, especially, everyone's first place is to go to Amazon, you got to make sure that you are using the right ingredients. So you want to make sure the source of that manufacturer, and again, as Jennifer said, referencing the appropriate resources that have that National Institute to provide those daily intake resources and making sure where those companies are resourcing that information from and testing their materials that they're putting in those supplements. So
Right.
always when in doubt, reference your medical health professional and just double check that it's an appropriate supplement for you if you want to find it from an additional resource.
Very good, Chloe. Yeah, and so we only have a couple of quick minutes left. I think one that's kind of fun that came up, Amanda. Great advice on food. Anything you can tell us all is maybe a go-to fast food order recommendation? I mean, I know we should never, ever, ever do that, but if we have to, what do you recommend we do?
Oh gosh. We don't eat fast food very often, but if we had to stop, I like to go to some place like Chipotle or like the bowls that I can build myself. So I try to focus on, like a brown rice as a base, black beans, sautéed veg, or even some places have tofu and then topping with guacamole compared to cheese and sour cream. So fast food is a tough one. There's a lot of sodium and things in there that we might not like as much, but we are all on the go. So yeah, I tend to go more that direction or Mediterranean. So falafel wraps and hummus and salads and veg like that are my two go-tos, I would definitely say.
Oh, you're such a good sport. I knew I was going to throw you for a little bit of a loop there, and that was really a great answer too.
Yeah.
So lastly, Jennifer, you talked a lot about fiber. So something that came up, folks are interested. Is fiber supplementation good? Is taking fiber pills a good idea? So ultimately, do you recommend supplementation, or do you have any supplements that you would say we really need to steer clear of?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there's a role for some fiber supplements depending on what's going on. Symptom wise, if people are having constipation or diarrhea, I do recommend fiber supplements often. For looser stools, something with a soluble fiber, which is found in a lot of foods like oats and barley. Things like that, but can be more concentrated in like psyllium husk, or a name brand you may have heard is like Metamucil, can help with stool bulking properties. And that's the type of fiber too that can also be beneficial for lowering cholesterol and improving glycemic load and such. There's also very well validated studies to show that psyllium husk is also beneficial for those with constipation as well. And then there's a variety of other fiber supplements on the market too, Citrusel, Benefiber that have different active ingredients. Some of these are powdered fiber supplements that you mix with water or like a juice. There are gummies as well, which anecdotally, I don't feel that patients notice significant improvement in their symptoms, but often can be just beneficial for increasing fiber in general. And then there are capsules as well, but I always advise people to look at the recommended serving size because often you'll need more than just one or two to actually improve and get the 5 to 6 grams of fiber that's promised. So overall, emphasizing whole foods, because those are delivered with a variety of vitamins and minerals in addition to the fiber, but certainly a role for fiber supplements as well, depending on symptoms, food access, and all those kinds of things.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you all so much. We have come right up to the end of our time that we have. I believe everybody's contact information that was on our panel today will be shared. So if folks have specific questions that they didn't bring up in the chat, you should be able to reach out as well. So on behalf of the Greater Lehigh Valley Chamber of Commerce Healthcare Committee, I'd like to thank Chloe, Amanda, and Jennifer for sharing their time and expertise as our presenters for today's webinar. I hope that we have helped answer the question, what's in my food, and provided some useful information that will help you make healthier decisions and improve your health and the health of your families and loved ones. Special thanks to St. Luke's University Health Network for sponsoring this series. Please watch your inbox for information on our next call in this series. And as a reminder, this call was recorded and will be available on the Chamber's website. Thank you for joining us and have a healthy day.